Kia ora tātou everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus, a TLA podcast. I'm your host Michael Andrew, and each episode we will be sitting down and talking to an inspiring guest connected to the legal sector, listening to their stories as they share their experience, and in the process explore some of the significant work that is being done behind the scenes that impact the industry and our communities. Our guest today is Benjamin Cleland, who has come to us from the Fisher and Paykel headquarters in East Tamaki, where he practices as an in-house employment lawyer. Ben is also the convener of the Law Association's Next Gen Lawyers Committee, and perhaps most interestingly, a Billy T Award nominated comedian. Ben, thanks so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
Well, it's nice to see you. How's your life been in the last few weeks since we chatted?
Oh no! Since that article was published, it's been awful. So many people protesting outside of my house and workplace. How could you dare? How dare you say those things? I've got a real bone to pick with you, actually, Michael. I've got a real. I'm kidding. It's been good. Busy. I have gone back to started my comedy grind again. So I was doing 2 gigs last week. So that was, for podcast listeners, I'm a semi-professional comedian.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I just found that out. It's not on your LinkedIn profile. Or if
actually,
it is, it's buried down there somewhere. I thought I was a good journalist.
Down.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the bottom, it's like, and also Billy T Award Nominated comedian in 2024 or something. It's like right down the bottom.
Are you the only lawyer comedian in New Zealand, do you think?
No. In fact, when I got admitted to the bar, I had to lean on some of because I didn't actually know that many lawyers, but I knew a lot of comedians. So I'd like, there's a guy called Ed Warren who I did comedy with, who he works at Simpson Grierson. I think he was sort of associate level. I can't remember what team he was in. So Ed Warren, he helped. He was a comedian. He was a lawyer. And then I was also friends with a woman called Julia Holden. We did a show together in like 2014. I don't know whether she's still a comedian, but she went to law school with me, and she is the niece of Judge Holden, the employment court judge. So yeah, there's actually a lot of lawyer comedians, believe it or not.
It's like a whole separate genre, like comedy law.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a little bit of crossover with law and comedy in the sense that, I mean, obviously with something like litigation and with comedy, you're doing public speaking. You're often trying to argue a point, although in comedy it's sort of like a funny or weird point of view that you're trying to argue for. Things like just being good on your feet when somebody throws you a curveball, you get heckled in the audience, or...
Yeah, like improvising, right?
Improvising. Yeah. Someone on the other side says something you weren't expecting. It's good to have those skills. But then obviously, there's it's a lot less serious. So I think there's crossover.
Yeah, it's cool though. Cool, like because you've got your legal work during the day, which can be obviously very austere and serious. You're dealing with some very serious issues, and then by night, there's a lot of brevity and just kind of
I definitely have a bit of like code switching. That you just sort of have to do. Particularly. Like, I mean, my job at in-house employment lawyer, that can be very serious in terms of you're often talking to an employee about, we've made the decision to dismiss you. These are the reasons why, something that's very serious. Yeah. And then turn around at night and I'm telling jokes about, I don't know, milking cows or something that was, or being from Waiuku or something. So it is a bit of a code switch. And then recently, one of my mates, he has been having, some issues at work, and so he's like, oh, you're an employment lawyer, I want to talk to you about these things. And then he was sort of a little bit, maybe taken aback or surprised that the fact that like I'm normally just joking around with him, saying silly stuff. most of the time that's my interactions, and then he wanted to talk to me about his problems, and it was straight business mode.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me the facts. This is what you're going to do. You're going to write this email. You're going to,
Yeah. Interesting. Wow, that's real cool.
So I don't know. I guess I'm just used to it.
Yeah. And how long have you been practicing comedy? Does it predate your law?
Yeah, I mean, look, I started doing comedy. I did my very first gig in 2013 at the Classic, and yeah, I've just been doing it ever since. And so, and then I was admitted in 2018. So
Right. So you did it all throughout your studies.
yeah, just all throughout uni. Yeah, it's probably why it took me so long to graduate. I just wasn't studying. I was just doing comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still trying to give up my lucrative legal career to, make 80K if I'm lucky being a full-time comedian. Yeah,
Well,
that's my dream.
Yeah, that's pretty respectable, I think, to do what you love and to practice performing arts, I think. Yeah. Couldn't ask for more than that, I suppose.
No, you couldn't.
Yeah. And so you mentioned Waiuku, so you grew up rurally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a small town. I think there's maybe 5,000 people there, Waiuku. So it's a sort of a small town, where everyone knows everyone. I lived in the town part, but my friends sort of lived more in the farm area. But, I mean, the town part is pretty small and it's surrounded by farm area. So, yeah, just grew up there. It's pretty boring. I don't know what to say about Waiuku. There used to be a really old sailing ship called the Jane Gifford, but that sank.
I think it came on the map when that rugby player...
Stephen Donald.
Stephen
kicked
Donald,
the last Beaver.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone was like, Waiuku!
Oh, yeah, Waiuku. Yes, his dad was my history teacher in high school, Stephen Donald. What was it, 2012 he did the kick?
Yeah.
And he used to own a local pub in Waiuku called the Wolf and Beaver, Stephen Donald being the Beaver.
Ah, I see. Oh, cool.
I mean, it's a very sort of picturesque place in many places around there. It's still, even though it's getting more developed, it's still not that developed. So you can still sort of see a lot of New Zealand the way that it used to be. I mean, and actually, Waiuku, it seems like a little bit of a time capsule in the sense that, you go there and you're like, wow, just nothing's changed.
Yeah.
People are still writing penny farthings and,
Yeah, interesting.
phones still have cords. It's an incredible place.
Yeah. And your parents, did they move there, or how long had they been in Waiuku?
Yeah, they moved there before I was born. So my dad's originally from Christchurch. My mum is from Malaysia. That's why I look like this. And, for the podcast listeners, I'm half Asian. So I mean, I basically lived in Waiuku my whole life until I went to the big smoke of Auckland.
Yeah, started your law studies.
Yes, studied law, or slept through law classes and went to comedy gigs at night.
And made jokes.
and somehow squeaked through.
So tell me a little bit about your work and your involvement with the Next Gen Committee.
I mean, I became the convener this term for the Next Gen Committee. At the time, the secretary was someone I knew from. He was one of my sort of not supervisors, but one of the senior lawyers at Chen Palmer when I used to work there. And he'd got in touch with me and said, "I need a convener for this committee I'm running. I think it'd be great for it." And don't worry about it being too... He was sort of like, don't worry about it being too much of a commitment. Like, I'll run the committee, I'll talk you through it, I'll do all the work. You just need to do what I tell you and you'll be sweet. So I'm sure, so I almost did it as a favour to him. Although, I've always sort of, I went to a lot of these events just for my own... for my own benefit. So I've already been going to a lot of, Newly Suited and the New Zealand Law Society one, the Auckland Young Lawyers. I'd already been going to a lot of their events anyway. Zong Pei was his name, and so he brought me on board. And then, like 1 month in, he just got a new job and left. so for all of the don't worry about it, just do what I tell you and you'll be sweet. That didn't really pan out. But I have really enjoyed it. The term that I've had. We've done a couple of different things, pieces of work that I'm really proud of. The last couple of events we did, I think were really good. We did one that was speed networking. It's like speed dating, but the whole idea was that we sort of thought there was an issue that juniors can find it intimidating or just awkward to approach and network with people who are older than them when they're at these networking collegiality events, which is rings true for me. And so the idea was to basically force people to talk to each other by doing it in this sort of speed networking way. So that was really well attended and really everyone seemed to enjoy that and get a lot out of it. And then we had another one inside the in-house experience, which is sort of talking about going in-house, which also seemed to coincide with my very first week at Fisher and Paykel, so it was very good timing for me. So there was a lot of insights there. We've done a lot of submissions on different public consultations. We did one on sort of digital stuff in courts, and so I think we've had a pretty good term. Haven't done too many law news articles, but yeah, I'm really sort of happy with what we've done in the previous term, and looking forward to see what the committee can do next term.
Yeah, nice. So you mentioned that transition from to in-house, so that's something that you've done. What's that transition like, and has it been quite rewarding for you in terms of your career and your enjoyment of your practice?
I would say yes. I think my transition to in-house has been a really positive experience. I wasn't sure about it when I did it. It had been something I'd always been thinking about doing. But at the time I was like pretty happy where I was. I wouldn't say that I like absolutely loved where I was. I was always sort of thinking about my next steps because I liked being a lawyer and working in the firm, but then I liked the work, but then there was also things that I'd always been thinking about, like, wouldn't it be great to be a barrister and do my own thing, or be like some sort of contractor, and so I just have a little bit more control over my own hours, and my own work, So, and then another thing that I thought about is going in-house, working for a company rather than a law firm. So it was something I'd always thought about, and then the opportunity just came up at Fisher and Paykel, and I just took it. It just seemed like, when am I going to get an opportunity this good again? Who knows? Let's just take the one that pops up. And it was, I think, definitely the right choice for me in the sense that, like in terms of money, it's more. In terms of work-life balance, it's much better, much better. Yes, even though I thought like the firm I was working for B Employment Law, and the partners Emma and Ange, they really did care about trying to make sure that you had a good experience there. So they actually did really care about that and do their best, but even though they were trying their best, there were still things that you just couldn't avoid. You still got your, I need to do an injunction at 3 p.m. on a Friday night, get it urgently done, right? You still got those things. You still got the, we've got a big, due diligence project. We've got a week to look at 5,000 documents. Start reading, guys. We still got those things. So it was just inherent to that work that we were doing, there was just always bits of work-life balance that weren't great.
Yeah, I can't imagine that you would have be able to line up gigs if you.
No, it was
had to
quite
work on a
hard. I
Friday
mean,
night.
the thankful thing about gigs is that they all start at 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. at night. So the good thing was that you could go, okay, well, it's 10 p.m. at night, so surely I'll be done with work by then, right? But there was definitely times where even for the 10 p.m. at night gigs, you would work up until you needed to go to the gig. You'd go to the gig and then you'd go home and be like, I guess I better do an hour of work now at midnight because it's got to be done by tomorrow. That's But with working in house, you just seem to have a lot more control. I mean, one is that I do feel like it's easier to say no to work when it comes in because you're working for the same person. It's pretty easy to say to them, hey, manufacturing, you've given me 7 things that I need to do. Now that you've given me the 8th thing, I'm just not going to be able to do it. Unless you don't want me to do the 7 things first. So it's actually a lot easier, but it's pretty hard to say to a client, hey, I've got 7 other clients, so you're not as important. I'm going to have to push you to the back of the line. I mean, you can still say it. You can still be like, really busy, sorry, I'm just going to have to get to things next week. But it's just a lot easier to do that with, I think, or I've found a lot easier to do it in-house. And then in terms of professional development and stuff, I do think it's actually helped me to have a little bit of a step up professionally as well, in the sense that I think in the firm, even though I was on the right track, you sort of, everything still needs to be run by the partner. You don't even write like a single email without that having partner review. So you do wind up leaning a lot on, your partners and your supervisors. And that is a good thing because you need to actually have that learning. In fact, I'd be pretty nervous about myself if I'd started in-house. But now it's like I actually do have a lot more autonomy over how I work and in terms of the advice that I need to give to the business, and then just having that extra autonomy and extra responsibility and sort of knowing that actually the buck kind of stops with me now does actually force you to be a little bit more diligent, but then also I think just mentally you can have a bit of have a bit more confidence.
So is that the normal? You wouldn't necessarily go into in-house if you were starting out. You need that time to just find your feet.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. And I know that the people that we've been hiring, we've been trying to hire people who have, when I say we, I mean the workplace relations team at Fisher and Paykel. We have been trying to hire people who have already had that law firm experience. I think, and just in terms of things like technical skills, you are going to be building up your technical skills just more in that law firm environment. In terms of stuff like supervision, you don't get as much supervision, I think, in the in-house environment. Even just in the sense that you're not in a firm, not everyone you're working there is a lawyer. And someone we just hired from another place who was working in-house, they were the only lawyer there, even though they were working in-house. So I do think probably for my career, it was probably important for me to have had that law firm experience. To a certain extent, just experience is good, in of itself, without needing to necessarily be justified. But I think in terms of things like technical skills and learning how to take instructions and learning how to know the law really well, and I think those were all things that you really build up, and you get those skills really good at law firms. So I think it was definitely very, very valuable, and I'm really glad that I did it. It's just that now that I'm an in-house lawyer, I'm just a lot happier.
Yeah. No, that's good. It strikes me with law that there's always so many practice areas that you can go, and like it's almost endless when you look at the different kind of fields like employment law, property law, criminal law. When you actually graduate and you finish your studies, what motivated you to get into employment law? I mean, was that a conscious thing at the beginning, or did you slowly segue into it?
Look, I'd always wanted to do employment law because I always liked the idea of a person or people focused area of the law. Like criminal, employment, family, these are all about people. I never really, got or enjoyed the things like commercial law as much when we talk about contracts or land. We're talking about someone's property. These are all things that I just didn't care about as much, just frankly. So I knew I wanted to do one of those three, the sort of employment, a family, or criminal side of things. It just made sense to me more. And then, look, I mean, I did actually find it relatively difficult to get a job after law school. And so I kind of, I think that's probably, if you didn't have a, clerkship with a big firm, from what I hear, that can be a pretty common experience. So I did just take the first job that I could get, and it just so happened to be a job. Well, I started at Chen Palmer, where I did a little bit of employment law, but mostly public law, which I enjoyed. And then after that, I moved to Leighton Hunter Butcher, where I was employment law full time. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoy employment law. It's something that it's easy to talk about because everybody is an employee pretty much, or has been an employee at some point in their lives. So it's something that people care about a lot, and yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's a people focused area of the law, and it's I just get it. It's something that I just understand.
Yeah. What is there any particular areas within employment law that you're really passionate about, or that you really enjoy? I'm sure there's tedious parts of the job as well.
Yeah. I mean, which parts? I hate the Holidays Act, but which is probably what any employment lawyer will tell you.
Why is it just because it's so just convoluted?
Yeah. So I mean, the real issue with the Holidays Act is that it is designed to work really well in if you have a factory of people where everybody works 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, and has the weekends off. So everyone just works a standard package, and it's all the same. So it works. It's quite easy to make that work. But then, when you get to different things like, okay, now we have people who work. Sometimes people, can't remember what exactly it's called, but when you're paid per part you make, or when you work variable hours, so you could start, one week you might work 70 hours, the next week you might work 30 hours, or when you get to people who are paid by commission, so actually they only have a small base salary, most of their salary is made in commission. All of a sudden, this idea of converting that, because like the Holidays Act uses weeks, you get paid for a week off. And then somebody actually just wants to take 1 hour of annual leave just to go and see their grandma for lunch on one particular day. It's actually so tricky to try and turn this idea of taking a whole week off and turn it into 1 hour for someone to take 1 hour of leave on one day, who is paid by commission and who works variable hours. And you're like, how do you even turn that? And so it's inevitable. Not only that, but then every single payroll system in New Zealand, for most employers, pretty much don't do it that way. They do it in the sort of accrual hours-based system. You task any employee how many hours and how much annual leave do you have. In the system, it'll say 300 hours. It won't say 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So inevitably, just a bunch of errors just creep in.
Yeah.
And those areas are mega serious, because if you don't get your Holidays Act right, well, you are you're not committing a crime per se, but you are committing, an offence that you can be penalised for under the Act, quite seriously. So it's a very, very tricky, and you need to do a lot of maths, which most lawyers really struggle with.
So you actually have to work all this out. It's not like the payroll person or the accountant.
Well, the thing is, the payroll person or the accountant will do their best. But if you are being, if you need to give advice on something in the Holidays Act and whether or not your payroll person or accountant has done it right, you're going to have to do the maths. You're going to have to look at the spreadsheet and go through what they've come up with. I remember having to do a Holidays Act question recently, and we were talking about how are we going to code? So the question for the in-house lawyers, how are we going to code all of these different leave types in this new payroll system that we're going to introduce? And so we have to go through a spreadsheet where we're like, okay, so if somebody works a public holiday, but it's a Mondayized holiday, but they don't normally work on Monday, then you need to process that as a public holiday on the whatever day it falls, but then if they work a different day, and then if they work variable days, you just have to sort of go back, figure out on average whether they normally work Monday or not, and then you process it as one code, and then you process it as the other code. Meanwhile, the payroll person stares at you, and their eyes slowly glaze over. So that's just a really frustrating thing. It's there's a lot of maths, and then there's also a lot of ambiguity. They're like, okay, so do I pay them for Monday or not? And you kind of have to say, you'd sort of just have to make a decision every single time you pay them for holidays leave based on their previous work pattern, which may have changed over time. So it's just, you can't actually just, when the answer that the payroll people want is just tell me whether I pay them public holiday on Monday or Saturday.
I see. Okay, so that's your least favourite. What's your most favourite?
The actual question you asked. I really liked the litigation part of it. I don't do a lot of it now that I'm in-house, but that was sort of the pieces of work that I really liked and find interesting. I recently wrote an article in the last Law News about the justification test in section, oh God, I hope I get this right. This would be awful if it's wrong on a podcast. Section 103A, about how that's going to take into account different employers' resources. So
that one about big employers,
big companies
and
versus small employers. Unfortunately, I work for a big employer, so that means we have more employment law obligations. But that's a sort of interesting. That's something that interests me from the perspective of it's interesting to talk about why should big employers actually have more obligations than small employers, or should it be everybody does the same, and then what does that even mean? Does that mean that small employers just get a hospital pass? I don't have to run the process properly because I'm small and I don't have the resources, or does that mean that? I think from the case law, what it means is that you'll be in more trouble as a big employer if you get things wrong, but that doesn't mean that as a small employer you have carte blanche to get things wrong just because you're small. Yeah.
How do you do it all, man?
How do I do it?
Yeah. Like the work with the Next Gen Committee, your legal work and your comedy. That's a huge...
well, I haven't slept in 3 years, and I'm massively underweight. And you just sort of have to find time. There's that saying that if you have something to, if you need something done, give it to somebody who's busy, right? You just have to sort of squeeze in time for what's important to you. At the moment, I'm just sort of, I'm married. I'm just trying to, make sure that, you have at least a minimum time per week that you spend with family. You obviously do your work and work time. And it has been a lot easier now that I'm in-house, I just work a lot less hours, and I'm a lot more in control of actually the hours that I do work. For instance, I was able to actually, arrange things so I could actually come in today to do this podcast. So it's been easier with doing that, and then, just making sure, well, okay, I've got 3 things I need to do for the committee, and then, I've got my gigs that I need to do, and I've got my songs I need to do, and you just have to prioritize and juggle things. It has meant that I've sent in a couple of things to the committee late, because sometimes committee work does wind up being the bottom of family first, and then obviously I need to keep them being employed, and then it sometimes falls to the bottom of that list. But yeah, you just only do what you can do. Try not to take on too much. The nice thing about being convener of the committee is that I get to delegate things to other people. So I get them to do the work for me. And so yeah, it's just good management. And I don't do anything outside of that. I don't hang out with my friends.
Well, you've got your audience, right? Yeah. They're your friends. They friends. Laugh at you.
They laugh. Exactly. Who needs friends? You can have a room full of strangers. I used to game a lot, and now I never game because I just don't have time.
Yeah. So gotta pick and choose.
You just gotta juggle the balls. That's the like analogy that Leo Donnelly, who used to be my supervisor at Gen Palm, used to say, it's like you're juggling glass balls and you're juggling rubber balls. You just got to know which ones are the glass balls because you have to catch them, and which ones are the rubber balls that they fall on the ground. It's fine. They'll bounce.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. Subscribe to InFocus, a TLA podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to connect with the Law Association, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, X or Instagram, or visit our website, thelawassociation.nz. Matiwa.